Thank you for listening to Scandinavian Crimes Podcast. Be sure to check out the episode links and be part of our other social media platforms where you can leave a topic suggestion or even share some of your insights regarding the subject matter of the episode. We will always do our best to provide a well-researched episode, but sometimes due to limited access to information and translation issues, some information can be lost. It is therefore good to do your own research and get a deeper understanding of a case of your own interest. So with that all said, let us start today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Scandinavian Crimes. My name is Devante, and say hello to my lovely co-host Delila.
Hi.
And in today's episode, we will cover the disappearance and the murder of Birna Brjánsdóttir. Now, forgive me if I butcher the name, and trust me, I will be butchering it several times over again during the rest of this story, but I'll probably refer to her as simply Birna. But she was a 20-year-old Icelandic woman who went missing in January 2017, sparking a massive search effort in Iceland. Her body was later found and the case received widespread media coverage and public attention. Now, what's super interesting and super kind of crazy about this case is Iceland has a very low crime rate, and 2017 was not that long ago. I graduated from college in 2017. So it's really crazy to hear things like this are still happening even by today's standards, even when we have technology and things to help prevent situations like this from happening. But as you can tell, it still does happen, not just here in America where, obviously we do have, more of this happening, but all over the world still. So sit back, get your snacks, grab your tea, and listen well, because this is the story of Birna Brjánsdóttir. On Friday night, January 13th, 2017, Birna went out with her friends to Huda, a club central to the city. She then was left alone around 5 a.m. that morning on January 14th, 3 hours after her friends left. Surveillance footage showed that Birna was walking along the main shopping street of Laugaveggur when a red Kia Rio stopped near her. It is believed that Birna was taken by force into the car. After Birna's friends and co-workers called her parents, it became apparent that she had not returned home or even contacted her parents, which was very strange for her. Birna lives with her father, and it's very unusual for her to not be in contact with any former family member, especially when she was going out. The parents contacted the police, and the search over the next week was the largest manhunt in Iceland, with more than 800 people volunteering to help. Her mobile phone was traced to Hafnarfjörður harbor, and her shoes were found nearby. The car was also traced back to the harbor where it was seen on surveillance video. The car had apparently been rented by a crew member of the Polar Nanok trawler, a green Icelandic vessel. With the assistance of the captain, the Icelandic police arrested 2 crew members on suspicion of murder, Thomas Möller Olsen and Nikolaj Olsen. With further investigation, the police also found that Birna's blood was in the car and her driver's license was on the ship. Despite the extensive search, there was no sign of Birna until her body was found 8 days later on January 22nd. Her body washed up near the Selvósviti lighthouse on the coast of Reykjanes Peninsula, more than 40 kilometers, which for my American folk, 26 miles away from where she initially disappeared. The autopsy established that her cause of death was drowning, but bruising also indicated that she had been strangled and hit in the face. She was found naked, but there was no evidence of any sexual assault. During police interrogation, Thomas Olsen denied any involvement in Birna's disappearance. He claimed that he and Nikolaj had picked up 2 girls in downtown Reykjavik on the morning of January 14th. He claimed that after dropping Nikolaj off the Polar Nanok, he parked at the end of the harbor and climbed into the back of the car with 2 women, one of whom was Birna. He said he kissed her and dropped the woman off at a nearby roundabout an hour later. Nikolaj initially confirmed Olsen's story but later retracted his testimony, stating that he had been too intoxicated to remember the events clearly and that Olsen had attempted to influence his statement. Nikolaj's vague statements seemed plausible given his level of intoxication as seen on CCTV footage. Olsen's statement, however, had too many inconsistencies. After dropping Nikolaj off, Olsen's phone was turned off for hours and the car wasn't seen on surveillance footage until 11 a.m. when Olsen returned to the harbor. He claimed to have slept in the car during that time, but the odometer reading suggested he took a long drive. He was also seen on video buying cleaning supplies and scrubbing the inside of the car, claiming he was trying to remove the vomit from the back seat. But when the forensics officer sprayed luminol, a chemical that reacts to bloodstains on the inside of the car, it lit up like Christmas. All the evidence suggested that Olsen was responsible for Birna's disappearance as well as her death. Additionally to this, 23.4 kilograms, which is, for my American folks once again, 51.6 pounds of pressed hashish blocks were found in his cabin aboard the trawler. He also had some scratches on his chest that would indicate a struggle during some sort of fight or altercation. Despite all of this, Olsen stuck to his original story in 9 police interviews. After 2 weeks in custody, Nikolaj was released as police concluded he was not present during the crime. The motive for Birna entering the car and why Olsen killed her remained a mystery even until this day. On March 30th, 2017, Olsen was charged with murder and drug possession. His trial began in August at Reykjanes District Court. He was widely covered by the Icelandic media, and in the courtroom was packed with members of public, including family and friends of Birna. In court, Olsen changed his story and attempted to place all responsibility for Birna's disappearance and the murder on Nikolaj. He claimed that his previous statement was delivered under duress and that the police had mistreated him during the interrogation. He also admitted that the drugs found in his cabin were his, despite denying knowledge of them before. In his new version of events, Olsen claimed that he was only driving for Nikolaj, who was aggressively pursuing women and girls at bars in downtown Reykjavik. He admitted to picking up one girl who fell asleep in the back seat while Nikolaj spoke to her. Olsen claimed that Nikolaj then drove off with the girl, and when the car returned, the girl was gone. He also claimed Nikolaj had blood on his hands and was extremely agitated. However, with all the evidence against Olsen, his story seemed impossible and highly unrealistic. His DNA was found on the laces of Birna's boots, and his fingerprints were all over her driver's license. Large quantities of blood were later found in the rental car, and her shoes were found near the spot where Olsen had parked the car. Security camera footage from where Olsen and Nikolaj met seems to confirm Nikolaj's version of events. The footage also shows Olsen spending significant time in the rental car at a secluded spot at the harbor after dropping Nikolaj off at the trawler, during which police believe the assault of Birna occurred. On top of this, the scratches on Olsen's chest and hands suggest a struggle. Olsen claimed that he often scratches himself until it gets bloody while sleeping, but could not offer an explanation for the blood found in the vehicle. He also claims that he was searching for his cell phone in the car during the time it was parked in the harbor and ended up falling asleep inside the car. Security camera footage shows Olsen driving off from the harbor and returning several hours later. Police believe that he used this time to dispose of Birna's body and attempted to scrub the car of evidence. When asked about the discrepancies between the previous testimony and his current one, Olsen cited mistreatment by the police and feeling like a monster after his arrest. Due to these allegations, Nikolaj became a witness against Olsen. However, he had very fragmented memory due to him being very intoxicated. His story was pretty much the same as the previous police investigations, with the evidence backing his statements. A month later, the judges convicted Thomas on both charges, Thomas Olsen being, and he was sentenced to 19 years in prison. After an appeal, Olsen's conviction was affirmed by the High Court in November 2018, and his sentence of 19 years in prison for the murder and drug smuggling was upheld, along with a 29 million kroner, which is, American money, $243,000 of assessment for cost and compensation. In October 2019, he was transferred to Denmark to serve the rest of his sentence. The disappearance and murder of Birna had a significant impact on the people of Iceland, who were deeply shocked by the brutal nature of the crime. It highlighted the vulnerability of young women who go out at night and shattered the sense of safety for all women. There were calls for greater security measures in Reykjavik's city center, particularly around the bars and nightclubs that are popular with young people. The incident also sparked a national debate about drug use in Iceland and the need for more resources to tackle drug trafficking. Wow. So this story was relatively short for the most part. It wasn't super extensive, but it's still very much important when it comes to the safety of women out there. Now, I will say this, even as a man, I'm hyper aware that as a human race, we're all pretty trash to each other. Men can be trash to other men can be trash to other women can be trash to other women can be trash, the whole thing, vice versa, everything. But particularly, it's very dangerous because there's a physical advantage that men have over women. This is undeniable. This is biological. We have, denser muscles and denser bone structure. And, we just naturally, we come out the womb stronger. And we spend our entire childhood as boys trying to control that strength, which, I'm just kind of pulling the curtain behind that for people who don't know. When you grow up as a boy, the whole point of growing up is learning how to have self-control because of the things that come with the territory. We're not monsters per se, but it's just simply, we can be a little rough. We can, especially when testosterone kicks in, we have less self-control, and our brains don't even stop developing in terms of fully mature until 30s, 40s. Like, our brain is still growing and changing and maturing. And now I'm not saying any of this as an excuse. The point I'm making is there needs to be some sort of, way for us to, protect women from men who lack impulse control, who, are driven solely by their desires, because this happens far too many times. There are people out there who never learned how to curb their urges or, their desires, and they're driven solely by those desires, and they can be very dangerous for women out there. I'm not just saying this simply because, it's a podcast. I'm a pretty big dude, so I've never had to think about, me at night wondering if someone's gonna, try and drag me into a car. I'm 250 pounds. I'm like just under 6'1". No one's going to be, doing that to me pretty easily. They're going to get a pretty big fight. But the fact is, that can happen to Delila. That can happen to my mother. That can happen to my sister. That can happen to my cousins. That can happen to friends. And, that those situations happen every single day around the world. And there should be some sort of, effort to try and make sure we can prevent these things from happening, because it does exist. And I'm not, also, once again, I'm not trying to say, men are evil, because I know we have a lot of male listeners, but I also know we have female listeners, and I have to, state the facts. When it comes to abductions, in situations where it's pulling people off the street, men are likely to do it because physically we're capable, and the market is mostly catered to men. Sex trafficking is mostly catered to men. Situations like this is more catered to men in terms of how they, can't really control those urges. So, this is not to bash anyone, but this story is truly, a sign that we need to do things differently. We need to look out for women. We need to help women. We need to make sure they are protected, they are safe, they're able to enjoy their lives. And we need to hold people, like him accountable. It's hard to say if Thomas Olsen was actually, if he truly did it or not, because as you've heard in the podcast before, there's times when the evidence seemed like one thing, but then in reality, something else can happen. But if he did do it, he needs to be held accountable, and so do people like him who don't know what they're doing is hurting people and making people feel unsafe when they deserve to have a life very much like how I'm able to function throughout my life. At least being a man. I'm not getting into the racial part of it, but, that's what needs to happen. But go ahead, Delila. I already know what you're going to kind of say about this and the whole idea of, being protected and protecting and all that stuff. So go ahead. I already know what you're going to say. Let me know what you think.
So this case was pretty much, done. They had so much evidence against Olsen, and I'm not going to say or, talk about too much, but I just want to say some small things. This whole case was a huge deal. And Iceland, I think we probably told you guys about that before, but Iceland had the lowest crime rate than in the world, I would say. And this case was just very huge in Iceland. And I'm glad that after this case, they started taking measures against, anything like this happening again towards women. They started putting up surveillance cameras and everything. And also, I don't think you mentioned it, but they did also make only women car services as well, so that if women want to ride home, they will be able to have a woman as a driver, for example. So they did actually do a lot of good things after this case to just make sure that everyone feels safe, or women feel safe. So it was, you know, even though it was a tragic event, it did lead to something good. I also have some thoughts or theories about why or how she went in, like, were, you know, somehow invited in the car. It wasn't really nobody really knew how it happened. But I think that he kind of drugged her and just put her inside the car, rather than like forcing her in a way to get inside the car, because that's harder to do. But, you know, either way, we will never know how and why. They also say that in Iceland that women, like back in the days, it was easier for them to just like walk in strangers' cars and get a ride. I don't know if that's true or not, but
I mean,
some articles did say that maybe she just willingly went in and believed in him or something. I don't know.
I think back in the day they did that more frequently. Even in the US, obviously, I wouldn't say in the 90s. I think by then people knew, but definitely in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, what we call it, hitchhiking. People used to do that all the time. They would go places, hitchhike. Like, oh, someone going in the general direction that I'm going, I'll ride with them. I'm like, they're strangers. But yeah, I think that was just a general culture at the time that we've quickly, you know, got up out of because of situations like this and serial killers. So
I also think like in Iceland that it's not a big country. There's not a lot of people. That population is not that big either. So maybe they felt more safe that it was more safe to do that. But in this case, it was not.
Probably.
Another thing I thought was stupid was how Olsen just like said a story during interrogation and then in the trial changed it abruptly and tried to frame Nikolai and stuff. I'm like,
he said a couple things.
Huh?
He said a couple things. He tried to make it seem like the police had forced him, and don't get me wrong, it's possible, but based on the evidence, it's not likely.
But they did also have a lot of proof.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I'm saying. It was unlikely.
Proof. How he changed the story makes him also not trustworthy or believable in a way. That's why usually you shouldn't really talk during an interrogation. You should probably wait for a lawyer.
Sometimes what happens though, like I said, it doesn't happen as often anymore, but sometimes police will try and get you to respond for that reason. They try to force you into a situation because they know the second you get a lawyer, there's only but so much you have to say at that point. Because once you tell your counsel, then they'll be able to, you know, figure out what they need to do in court and all that jazz. So a lot of the time police, like I said, it's not impossible. They did have evidence, but, you know, just from that alone, I know it does happen. And even people who change their stories, even though it does happen that they can be guilty, there is, unfortunately, because of a few bad eggs, it's very much possible that, you know, maybe there was an instance where, you know, they were coerced or something like that. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying, unfortunately, in situations like this, you have to take all possibilities into account because of the history of how unfortunate things have transpired when it comes to the criminal justice system in any country. But that's, you know, I already said what I had to say before, but that was just to respond to what you were saying.
Yeah. Even though, like, Nikolai, he kind of also did, you know, change his story. I guess he didn't change his story. He was more like, you know, I agree with you the first time, but I feel like I can't really remember anything, so I'm just gonna withdraw everything I said. Yeah. So I guess it's not really changing anything. It's mostly like I can't rely on my memory, so
yeah. And even then, when the first time he said what happened, he never gave any specific detail. He was like, yeah, I just remember seeing her and I left. So it wasn't like the story changed drastically. It's like you said, he just specified. I mean, that's what I remember seeing, but also I was very drunk. So the only thing I know for a fact is I got dropped off.
At least he was honest, and there was proof, that he
didn't do
was
anything.
too drunk to even remember anything.
Yep. So, like I said, it's a pretty straightforward story, but it just goes to show that it can be very dangerous for people, especially women who go out and, they're just living their life. And
that's like a normal life for women nowadays, honestly, which is sad.
So
to always have to be aware and stuff,
I mean, it's a very scary world we live in, and obviously I wish we live in a world where everyone just had a little bit more self-control and were able to control their urges, but unfortunately we have people who just are not capable of doing such things.
Well, I guess that's pretty much it for today. It was, as you said, straightforward case. The story's interesting. It's more like we wanted to tell the story to you guys and inform about safety and everything,
Well, I'll say this before we end up with the food. Ladies, be safe out there. Watch your back. Let people know where you are. Life 360 app is a lifesaver. Make sure you share it with a friend who you trust, who knows where you're at all times. You want to go to clubs, you want to go to lounges. Be sure to move as a unit. If you leave your drink alone for more than 10 seconds, get a whole new drink. And, just be mindful of everything. The tactics, the tricks. Don't go home with strangers. I don't care how attractive he or she may be. Don't do it. It ain't worth it. It ain't worth your life. Come on now. At least do a little bit more vetting. If they want to date you, that's fine. It's okay. But just do a little bit more vetting for your safety, because there's people out there who love you and obviously would be very upset if you ended up missing or dead. So just be careful. I know you're already being careful, but unfortunately, just like driving, you have to account for morons. So be careful. Take care of yourselves. And let's end it on a good note. Well, since I said going out to lounges, I think I'm going to do something a little different. Let's hit it with a little drink. Like a little drink. I know you probably going to pick some wine or something.
Tipsy. Okay. Did you say wine?
You're probably going to say wine or something like that. I don't know. But
I thought you would say like a literal. Okay, sorry.
I would say I'm going to go for a Long Island, because that's my go-to, because it's a mixture of like 5 different alcohols. So if you want to go out and have a good time on a budget, that's like over here in America, it's like $13, give or take. So if you're paying $18 for a Long Island, they can go suck it, because it's not worth no $18. You could pay like $12, $13, get you a good Long Island, and you'll be buzzed. Isn't like everything
expensive now, however? I don't know.
You could still go suck it. It's not $18 for no Long Island. So you can pay like $12, $13, get a good Long Island from a decent bar, and guess what? You'll be a little tipsy because it has 5 different alcohols in it. There's barely any chaser, just a little bit of seltzer, and you'll be fine. But that's what I'm going to recommend. Go ahead, Delila.
Well, in that case, I'm going to go with mojito. Is that how you say it? I don't freaking know.
Oh, that's a good one. Very delicious.
Yeah, I do like the sour, the mint, everything. I just like that.
And it's very palatable, It goes down smooth because it tastes like more like juice than the alcohol, but it can sneak up on you, though. So, that's just a little vibe, it's a little something. I mean, like, style. But I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and be sure to stick around for next week's episode. That one also, too, is going to be a very interesting case. And hopefully, we'll see you next time. Stay safe, and see you next time, my friends.
Bye.